KPPP-LP Fargo-Moorhead 88.1 FM. Last month, I let everyone know here that there was some queer representation achieved in Cartoon Adventure Time and Voltron. So, moving along, I hope that you all voted yesterday, wherever you may be, so that you can make a difference in your community's future. I'm recording this prior to the midterm results because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I need to get it done because it's Wednesday. And I won't be able to comment on the results of that, but I hope you did your research for whatever candidates and propositions, proposals that you saw in your area and here. Here in Moorhead, we don't have any measures to vote on, just a bunch of candidates. So I hope that you are satisfied with the choices that you made. I'm also letting you know that this particular episode segment of Finding Me is going to be split up into 4 parts. It's still going to be an hour long. It's just going to be split into the 4 parts between 15 to 20 minutes each. So this week, you're only going to hear 15, 20 minutes of this show. And then you'll have to tune in next week for part 2. And then I'm going to talk about a couple of things. So, for example, some thoughts on some recent news that I know some of my listeners in the LGBTQ plus community needs to hear in terms of resources, news articles. Some of you may have already read it because it was dated back October 1st. Not October 1st, 21st. And I'm going to be reading that article in a moment. And later, in the other later parts, I will get back to reading Critical Discourse Theory Analysis from Chapter 2 of the Media Representation of Homosexuality PDF by Kuhar. And then I'll be taking apart some stuff that happened online in terms of that queer fandom discourse. And later on at the end of the show, I'll be linking you to some surveys I created because it hasn't been done before to my knowledge, but I wanted to collect demographic information of LGBTQ individuals in fandom and in terms of shipping culture because I haven't seen it before, and it's really interesting to see like what LGBTQ people gravitates toward in terms of media, what they want to see for media representation of individuals like themselves or myself. And also to see why they ship the things they do, if it's something personal to them or if it's something new to them, and what that's like. So I'm going to be getting into the news that I have here in a bit, as well as the article that I have to share. So I'm going to pull up one and then the other. So there's an event this Friday for a health day in the Fargo-Moorhead community. I'm going to pull up both of these things while they load. And I felt like I should share this article because, let's start with the article first while my other thing loads. But this article was published in the New York Times by, let's see what the writers' names were. Erica L. Green, Katie Benner, and Robert Pear. Published October 21st of this year. And so the article goes, and I'm just going to be making my commentary as I go. The Trump administration is considering narrowly defining gender as biological, immutable condition determined by genitalia at birth. The most drastic move yet in the government's wide effort to roll back recognition and protections of transgender people under federal civil rights law. A series of decisions by the Obama administration loosened the legal concept of gender in federal programs, including in education and healthcare, recognize their gender largely as an individual's choice and not determined by losing my place here. A series of decisions by the Obama administration loosened the legal concept of gender in federal programs, including in education and healthcare, recognize their gender largely as an individual's choice and not determined by the sex assigned at birth. The policy prompted fights over bathrooms, dormitories, single-sex programs, and other arenas where gender was once seen as a simple concept. Conservatives, especially evangelical Christians, were incensed. Now, the Department of Health and Human Services is spearheading an effort to establish a legal definition of sex under Title IX, the federal civil rights law that bans gender discrimination in education programs that receive government financial assistance, according to a memo obtained by the New York Times. The department argued in its memo that key government agencies need to adopt an explicit and uniform definition of gender, as determined on a biological basis that gender, grounded in science, objective, and administrable. The agency's proposed definition would define sex as either male or female, unchangeable, and determined by the genitals that a person is born with, according to a draft reviewed by the Times. Any dispute about one's sex would have to be clarified using genetic testing. Which is strange because I've talked about intersex individuals, and I've talked about the many layers of gender, from the development to not just the genetic part, but the other layers that complicate things on the inside, genetically speaking, like how individuals can be born with XYY chromosomes or XXX chromosomes and so on and so forth. You should really look into it. Probably really easy to find. Sex means a person's status as male or female based on immutable biological trait identifiable by or before birth. The department proposed in a memo, which was drafted and has been circulating since last spring. The sex listed on a person's birth certificate, as originally issued, shall constitute definitive proof of a person's sex unless rebutted by reliable genetic evidence. The new definition would essentially eradicate federal recognition of the estimated 1.4 million Americans who have opted to recognize themselves, surgically or otherwise, as a gender other than the one they are born into. This takes a position that what the medical community understands about their patients, what people understand about themselves, is irrelevant because the government disagrees, said Catherine E. Lehman, who led the Education Department's Office for Civil Rights in the Obama administration and helped write transgender guidance that is being undone. The move would be the most significant of a series of maneuvers, large and small, to exclude the population from civil rights protections and roll back the Obama administration's more fluid recognition of gender identity. The Trump administration has sought to bar transgender people from serving in the military and has legally challenged civil rights protections for the group embedded in the nation's healthcare law. Several agencies have withdrawn Obama-era policies that recognize gender identity in schools, prisons, and homeless shelters. The administration even tried to remove questions about gender identity from a 2020 census survey and a national survey of elderly citizens. For the last year, the Department of Health and Human Services has privately argued that the term sex was never meant to include gender identity or even homosexuality, and that the lack of clarity allowed the Obama administration to wrongfully extend civil rights protections to people who should not have them. Roger Severino, the director of the Office of Civil Rights at the department, declined to answer detailed questions about the memo or his role in interagency discussions about how to revise the definition of sex under Title IX. But officials at the department confirmed that their push to limit the definition of sex for the purpose of federal civil rights laws resulted from their own reading of the laws from a court decision. Mr. Severino, while serving as the head of the DeVos Center for Religion and Civil Society at the Heritage Foundation, was among the conservatives who blanched at the Obama administration's expansion of sex to include gender identity, which he called radical gender ideology. In one commentary piece, he called the policies a culmination of a series of unilateral and frequently lawless administration attempts to impose a new definition of what it means to be a man or a woman on the entire nation. Transgender people are frightened, said Sarah Warbello, the legal director of the Human Rights Campaign, which presses for the rights of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. At every step where the administration has had the choice, they've opted to turn their back on transgender people. After this article was published online, transgender people took to social media to post photographs of themselves with the hashtag #Won'tBeErased. The Department of Health and Human Services has called on the Big Four agencies that enforce some parts of Title IX, the Departments of Education, Justice, Health and Human Services, and Labor, to adopt its definition in regulations that will establish uniformity in government, increase the likelihood that courts will accept it. The definition is integral to two proposed rules currently under review at the White House. One from the Education Department deals with complaints of sex discrimination at schools and colleges receiving federal financial assistance. The other, from Health and Human Services, deals with health programs and activities that receive federal funds or subsidies. Both regulations are expected to be released for this fall and would then be open for public comment, typically for 60 days. The agencies would consider the comments before issuing final rules with the force of law, both of which could include the new gender definition. Civil rights groups have been meeting with federal officials in recent weeks to argue against proposed definition, which has divided the career and political appointees across the administration. Some officials hope that the Health and Human Service will at least rein in the most extreme parts, such as the call for genetic testing to determine sex, which is super intrusive as it is. After more than a year of discussions, Health and Human Services is preparing to formally present the new definition to the Justice Department before the end of the year. Trump administration officials say if the Justice Department decides that the change is legal, the new definition can be approved and enforced in the Title IX statutes and across government agencies. The Justice Department declined to comment on the draft Health and Human Services proposal. The Justice Department has not yet been asked to render a formal legal opinion, according to an official there who is not authorized to speak about the process. But Attorney General Jeff Sessions' previous decisions on transgender protections have given civil rights advocates little hope that the department will prevent the new definition from being enforced. The proposal appears consistent with the position he took in October's 2017 memo sent to agencies clarifying that the civil rights law that prohibits job discrimination does not cover gender identity per se. Harper Jean Tobin, the policy director of the National Center for Transgender Equality, an advocacy group, called the maneuvering an extremely aggressive legal position that is inconsistent with dozens of federal court decisions. Health and Human Services officials said that they were only abiding by court orders, referring to the rulings of Judge Reed O'Connor of the Federal District Court in Fort Worth, Texas, a George W. Bush appointee who held that Congress did not understand sex to include gender identity. A 2016 ruling by Judge O'Connor concerned a rule that was adopted to carry out a civil rights statute embedded in the Affordable Care Act. The provision prohibits discrimination based on race, color, national origin, sex, age, or disability in any health program or activity that receives federal financial assistance. But in recent discussions with the administration, civil rights groups, including Lambda Legal, have pointed to other court cases. In a legal memo presented to the administration, a coalition of civil rights groups wrote, "The overwhelming majority of courts to address the question, since the most relevant Supreme Court precedent in 1998, have held the anti-transgender bias constitutes sex discrimination under federal laws like Title IX." Indeed, the Health and Human Services proposal was prompted in part by pro-transgender court decisions in the last year that helped the Obama administration position. In their memo, Health and Human Services officials wrote that courts and plaintiffs are racing to get decisions ahead of any rulemaking because of the lack of standalone definition. Courts in previous administration took advantage of this circumstance to include gender identity and sexual orientation in a multitude of agencies and under a multitude of laws. The memo states, doing so led to confusion and negative policy consequences in healthcare, education, and other federal contexts. The narrow definitions would be acutely felt in schools and their most visible battlegrounds, locker rooms and bathrooms. One of the Trump administration's first decisive policy acts was the rescission of the Education and Justice Departments of Obama-era guidelines that protected transgender students who wanted to use bathrooms that correspond to their gender identity. Since the guidance was rescinded, the Education Department's Office for Civil Rights has halted and dismissed discrimination cases filed by transgender students over access to school facilities. A restrictive government-wide definition would cement the Education Department's current approach. but it would also raise new questions. The department would have to decide what documentation schools would be required to collect to determine or codify gender. Title IX applies to a number of educational experiences like sports and single-sex classes or programs where gender identity has come into play. The department has said it will continue to open cases where transgender students face discrimination, bullying, and harassment, and investigate gender-based harassment as unwelcome conduct based on a student's sex, or harassing conduct based on a student's failure to conform to sex stereotypes. The Education Department did not respond to an inquiry about the Health and Human Services proposal. Ms. Lehman and the Obama Education Department said that the proposed definition quite simply negates the humanity of people. So I'll be sharing that article if it's still even vaguely relevant after Tuesday. But for a lot of people, that was really discouraging to read and hear about that transgender people like me and transgender people you know or that you are would be redefined out of existence. But the thing is, we've been around forever, and so have intersex people. And most of the time, they don't get the consent to exist as themselves because they've already had that taken away from them in some form or another. And a lot of people, at least from what I've seen, like, there's this Netflix series that talked about sex and gender. And even there was an episode where intersex people, I think it was in Europe, they had a more positive representation just to exist as they were, but they would be really resentful of what was done to them on their bodies without their consent when they were babies, and not having that choice to just be who they are or to make the change in the direction that they chose if they wanted to do that. And that's not fair to them, and that's not fair to us to be told what we are, because we know who we are and what we're not. And quite frankly, I don't plan on changing to not be a guy anytime soon. So, that's how it's going to be. And lastly, and that's just the comment I wanted to make, and I hope that we have nothing to fear today, because I don't know what the midterm results are, because I'm recording this I'm actually about to go vote in a bit, but from when I record this. But the other thing I wanted to share for my community is this event, if you're unaware of it, but it's the LGBTQ plus Healthcare Day. So, according to this, please come on down Friday, November 9th at 9 a.m. to get some affirming resources, some free services, or even thank these organizations for their commitment to affirming care at the Pride Collective and Community Center, which is located at 1105 First Avenue South in Fargo. Many people in the LGBTQ plus community don't know who they can trust for affirming healthcare or have doctors without any education around specific health concerns facing the LGBTQ plus community. This event is a means to connect the LGBTQ plus community with the health service providers who are affirming and or knowledgeable about LGBTQ plus healthcare. So if you want to have a schedule of the organizations in attendance, you can go to the Facebook event page at tinyurl.com/LGBTQ-Healthcare Day 2018. I'm just going to read the list of organizations that will be there according to the event page here, since I'm on it right now. So some of the people that are going to be there are Harper Health Clinic, which I talked about last month. They'll be there from 10 to 2. And then there'll be Fargo Cass Public Health from 10 to 12, along with the Red River Women's Clinic and the Village Family Service Center from 10 to 3, Community Health 12 to 2, DSA for Medicare for All 1 to 3, Inner Canvas Counseling 1 to 3, and Planned Parenthood from 12 to 2. So please check that out. If you're LGBTQ or you know someone that is, to get the care they need, answer some questions, or so that they can move forward in their life, doing what's safe for them medically, or just having someone they can be comfortable with and be themselves, so because I know I would appreciate that, and I'll probably check that out soon enough, or at least that's the hope. So crossing fingers that I do go there. We'll see. But I wanted to make sure that got out, so you can go to that event November 9th. It starts at 10 a.m. This Friday. And I think that's all I have for you today for this 20-minute segment. And I will come back to you next week with another 15-20 minute segment. Again, on the PDF with media representation of homosexuality in Slovenia. If you haven't looked at that, I will once again share a link to my previous show where I talk about it and link it in the program. So I'll catch you guys next week. Did you find yourself today while finding me? Feel free to send me a message. You can contact us at 701-566-0917, at Nemo Potatoes on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Contact me through my contact on kpppfm.com/finding-me on that tab, or email me at nemo@kpppfm.com. If you'd like a sneak peek to the building of Finding Me programs in the future, consider becoming a patron at my Patreon at patreon.com/anemonefish. Follow us on Facebook at 88.1 FM Fargo Moorhead, the People's Press Project, and Mexi-Can. Donations to Fargo Moorhead's newest low-power commercial-free radio station can be made at our website on kpppfm.com/donate, and check out our underwriting opportunities at kpppfm.com/underwriting-opportunities on how you can support the first queer radio program in the Red River Valley. Thanks for tuning in. See you next month on the first Wednesday here on Finding Me.